Hi guys, Kleffinghaus here. Today I'm going to talk to you about the APC40MK2 Resolve Edition kit. That will work on the upgraded APC40 hardware controller. And the original one I've been working on since about 3 years now, and we're now on version 9. All these features from version 9 I've ported onto the MK2 edition. So we'll find all the same features. Layout-wise, there are a few changes. The most important one is the row of knobs here, which was on the MK1 on the right side, so slightly different. And there's some changes in the layout on the right side, but you'll find principally all the features you found on the MK1 also on the MK2. Biggest advantage of the MK2, there are two. The size is slightly different, so depending on your desk space, this might be a better option. And it's available as new, so you don't have to search for second hands on eBay or some crappy other sites. You can just get a very reliable new model with warranty, etc. No broken knobs or things like that. So, unless you already have an MK1, of course, then feel free to stick with that. You won't miss anything. But if it breaks down, you can switch over to an MK2 and very reliably continue your work editing on there. So this video is intended to be a full user manual for the MK2, but also for the MK1 owners, because since the video on the MK1 there have been so many new features released that I've been describing and updating in the manual. But it's better to see that on a video, and it's very easy for you to understand where you'll find that feature on MK1 if I demonstrate on the MK2. As with the MK1, similar layout, so you start around the center here for the most used features, primary sort of grading, and then you go up and out. So up, starting with the most used knobs on the bottom and going up to lesser used knobs. Of course, this will never 100% be true, but sort of a general design principle to find stuff. And if you can't find anything, there's a very handy new feature in there. HUD, you enable the head-up display by selecting this button. And once that's active, if you press and hold the fit button, you will see what in that page is currently actively mapped on these groups of knobs. Yeah. If nothing happens, it's either you didn't press the HUD button or there's nothing active at the moment, which is an important thing. Main control starts here. This row of buttons is intended for main page switches. So if you press this button, you switch to the curves page, and you have different types of curve, custom, luminance saturation, etc. You activate these by just pressing them, and the one active will indicate by visual feedback that one is active. If nothing is active, they will all be in the same neutral color. Similarly, press another button, qualify. You will see on top different qualify options which you can select, and shapes. If you see nothing on top, that means there's no associated buttons on top that operate this, and you just have the basic features on the knobs for that control. So in this case, what do we have there? Let's see, you have there, in case of sizing, you have zoom, pan, tilt, all these kinds of things. We'll go through the details later. It's just more general. Similarly, for the buttons there, you won't see a lot happening on top because they don't associate with that feature. On the top here, you have different sections. For example, you have a fully operated tracker, which you can operate here. You have general buttons for clip control, copy and pasting grades, keyframe operations, etc. All labeled, and we'll go through them in detail later. And the right side, you have your creation of different nodes. And the bottom two rows below here, general purpose knobs to switch to different pages, like edit page. You want to press here, you go to edit page. Fairlight, and back to color. You have more on the right side, you have handy stuff like bypassing a node quickly or a whole grade. You can mute all the audio. You have different viewer options. You can go to a full viewer or a lightbox viewer, full page, looping control, split, wipe, highlight keys, all that kind of push button type of handy features are there. And you have on this section, basically below these 8 knobs, you have buttons that operate in the same pages and modify what's going on there. You will see that in the individual pages, and also it's available as always in the HUD. So in the brownish section you see, for example, that this button will operate outline, this invert, this mask, and that reset. Typically the bottom 4 are related to reset options. You see on this icon, there's a reset icon. You see it on these areas as well. They all operate reset type of features. You have a center knob which in most cases will do something like zooming or navigation. In this case it's like a zooming. You have all kinds of modifier keys for that. I'll show you later. Fit, you reset the sizing. And if you are in the edit page, for example, then it will operate the famous jog feature which I designed. And you can, let's say you open a clip in the source view window, you can toggle between the source and the main timeline, and it will automatically detect the position. So if you modify the screen, layout a little bit, you just press it again and it will find the right jog position. And it's super smooth, very nice. You will see it when you use it. Same in Fairlight, it will operate as well. And the only difference here on the MK2, you have one knob here that has clicks, and I mapped that to single frame forward and backwards. That's, for example, handy in the color page where you don't have this smooth jogging feature. So you can use this instead, this to go forward 1, 2, and to do some very detailed keying and things like that. Very handy, especially with the clicks. Some navigation to the first frame and the last frame of the clip. And here you have a section which we'll talk about later, but you can do all kinds of navigations. You can note navigation, keyframe navigation, marker navigations, using this navigation area. If you haven't pressed any of these buttons, you can navigate between different clips, for example. There's an undo, redo as you go up and down. And if I toggle any of these, then now it's notes, I can navigate notes. And if I do keyframe, I can navigate keyframes. I don't have keyframes now. Markers, timeline markers, yeah. And I have here timeline navigation, where you can navigate the DR15 new multiple timelines. So I can go A directly to timeline A. I can go timeline D. You will see it happening on the screen. It's a bit small, the A, B, C indicator, but it's a direct movement between the 4 timelines. Here is an important button, reset. So if you short press, you reset the current node. If you long press, you reset the entire grade. So probably used a lot and will wear and tear. Play and shift play, you go backwards. This one, you can grab a still. So let's play a little bit forward, and then we grab a still of this. And this one, you can save your project, and you will say project saves, an extra pop-up window to confirm that you actually saved it. On top here, I have copy grade. And the moment I've pressed copy, you see that there's something there for pasting. So you press paste and you paste the grade. Copy node, same thing. Paste node. Keyframe type, I can switch keyframe type between color, sizing and all. And then here I can create a dynamic keyframe and a static keyframe. And so let's say we create a static keyframe here, and we get another static keyframe here. If I now press this keyframe navigation modifier, I can navigate between the keyframes. So you immediately see now what the intent ID of that keyframe navigation is. It has another function. If we are in the tracker, we'll show you later when we're in tracking, you can maneuver tracker keyframes when keyframe is active. So very handy. Versions, you can create new versions, of course, previous version, next version. You have apply graph and append to graph. Some extra features underneath these two. You can apply a grade from one clip previous if you hold, and on two clips previous. So it's press hold, it's 1 and 2 previous, and otherwise it's apply graph and append graph. You also have a handy memory feature, direct access to different memory locations. So the red ones is for storing and the green ones is for reading them. Okay, I think we've covered most of the more general controls. So let's focus on the principal controls for the color page. So around the center knob we have primary bars, we have primary wheels, we have log. Yeah, so in log mode, for example, we switch on the HUD, and what do we have there? We have the levels, we have colors, we have contrast, and the details, mid-tone details, color balance, etc. Yeah, same if you go to the primary wheels page, only you miss two options. So the rest of the layout is identical to enhance the muscle memory. All the way in the bottom of the HUD you see some extra stuff regarding trackball. You can ignore that, that's described in the manual, and also more for people who have an extra trackball next to this. If you have, for example, a tangent ripple, then you don't need that at all, which I have at the moment. Okay, so let's play with it. Let's give it some contrast, or use the contrast knob directly. Put some saturation in there. Let's give it some warmth. Make whatever change you need. And at the left side you see an extra flashing button, which indicates that there is the individual parameter reset availability. So if you press this and hold it, any button you touch, so for example saturation is gone, temperature is gone, and your lift is gone. Okay? So you have individual, or you have full sections here, or of course the whole grade. Yeah, the same for log, individual, so we give it a lot of, let's say, saturation, and again some warmth, and then we can of course reset the whole thing with our reset buttons, or again go individual. So you have more control over what you are doing there. Speaks for itself, but if you press another time you have also RGB mixer under there. And for example, RGB mixer has a few buttons under there, so if you press the HUD you see that you have monochrome and preserve luminance buttons there available to do these things. That's typically what happens with the buttons below. It will have function for manipulating switches in the specific pages where you're in. If we move more to the left, we have the curves, secondary controls. So we have custom, lumen, then saturation, hue saturation, etc. So let's pick, for example, hue luminance, and again in the HUD you see how it is mapped. Yeah, you can go directly for the reds, we can go for the yellows and the greens, and we can individually control the selected point if you have any non-standard points. And of course we can reset, we can activate a Bezier control. Yeah, that's about it. Custom, that's where all the magic happened. Probably you know that, but about 2 years ago I built there something crazy where you can set and control individual points in the custom curve. HUD is very useful there. So you have next point to detect points, standard points to create standard points, delete points, and reset curve. So let's say we set standard points, we go to this point and we start controlling, and I go to this point and I start controlling, and it loops around. So you see this point and no, I don't want this point, go away. I hate you, you also, go away, don't like you. And then you can quickly dial in your curve this way, and it's color aware. So if I go, let's say, to reds, and I say, well, I want the reds, I do want this, the default points for whatever crazy reason, and you can go here. Yeah? Similarly, green, now green I do it, let's say, the old-fashioned way with the mouse. I put this one here. So I cycle through once for new points, and then I can find it again. Yeah. So completely mouseless control over your curves. Pretty unique. Other than that, you have control of your soft clipping here. And of course, you can see that again in the HUD if you get lost. Always use the HUD. One to the right, qualifier. Activate our key highlight so we can see what we're doing. Let's take it on a clip. And here you have already something qualified, so we can start adjusting it. Yeah, change the softness, saturation a little bit. Well, let's say we forgot where is the noise reduction or denoise. Now here you go. See, it's on the right. So here we have denoising, and here we have clean black, clean white. Yeah, so you can quickly dial in qualifications. You can, make them visible, and of course you can reset individual sections here as well. Next, shapes. All kinds of beautiful shapes you can select, and you can reset it, and of course you can manipulate them. So you can size it, you can position them, you can put some softness on them, and again the HUD will tell you what features you have there, and it adjusts itself depending on what you have selected. You only have one softness available, so you can go here and you can adjust the softness, but you won't be able to do that here, you see? So it will not allow you to change stuff that's not active at the moment. Pretty handy. Very useful in the tracking area. So let's say you've got something you want to track, this dancer, and I've got here a circle, and let's position it over her head. So I want to track her head, like here. I switch to the tracker, and I don't want to track 3D and zoom and rotate. I just want to track pan and tilt, and I can go forward tracking. Here we go. Crazy dancer, and stop is enough. Some extra nice features. Let's say you are somewhere in the middle and you've switched to frame tracking mode, and I go keyframe and I set a keyframe, and I can maneuver through the keyframes in the tracker. I can take a keyframe out, can move to another point, set a keyframe, go out of frame mode, go to clip mode. So you have full control over your whole tracker. You can go switch tracking types. You can go to a different tracker. You can go to the stabilizer and select different types. You can go to the FX tracker. Very handy stuff there. Sizing speaks for itself. Besides this, you have an AB button which cycles through different types of sizing, so you can control any sizing that's available. And the knobs automatically adjust, of course, accordingly. So here I have my pan and tilt and my distortion, but if I'm in a different mode, then this one will operate rotate, which is in a different position. So all auto adjusting, and again, check the HUD if you get lost. Flips, resets, you have all kinds of stuff in there. So play with it. One nice extra feature, if you're in output sizing, and you can go and cycle through different blanking presets quickly. Of course, in the HUD mentioned. And we can reset, of course, all different sections. Yeah. Similar setup in the different pages. You will start to see patterns when you go through the different pages on how to control things. Key mode. Well, if you have a key, you can operate your key here. Nothing much to tell. Blur. Two features, blur, MFX. So if I press it again, I have motion effects, and back again into blur, or sharpen, however you want to call it. So I can go sharpen and mist, because sharpen is basically blur in reverse, I don't need the other one. And I can go here, select very fine control for the blur radius and all the other features. I have some buttons for linking things. I can reset specific sections, and if I press it again, I go to motion effects. So if you are a studio user, you can operate motion effects, and the handy AB button now goes through and cycles your frames. So let's say I have 1 frames. See, I cannot operate it. An interesting state which you can get in if you're in the wrong sizing mode. Sometimes it's hard to find out. Look, I'm in output sizing, so I go to a normal sizing mode, and I go back to my motion effects, and now I can control it again. That's something funky. You sometimes spend hours on looking at it. So remember, if you can't operate your controls in the bottom, you're probably somewhere in output sizing mode. That's a good tip. So now I can control my Luma, my chroma, motion. Luma and chroma is linked. I can unlink it. Again, everything is there. And HUD is always there to the rescue. And give it some motion blur, for example. Yeah. So full control over motion effects, blur, sharpen. It's on this page. And then this already covered. So we miss one icon here, FX on the key. So what does it mean? That's the OFX. OFX is buried under the key. It's just some legacy. I didn't have enough buttons anymore. And it's something not everybody might use every day. And key is something you really use a lot. So put it under there. And this button will determine where you are. Now you're in key mode, as indicated by a pop-up, and now you're in OFX mode. You can switch at will between the two. And once you're in OFX mode, of course you have to put an OFX on your clip. So let's put an OFX on there. Let's take another clip. Get bored of this clip. Let's do this one and do a color compressor on there. So, yeah. So now, if you press the buttons immediately underneath, or you check again the HUD, you see OFX detect and custom, and so you just press it and it will detect the OFX if you actually press it. And it tells you in a pop-up that it detected it, and if it's a pre-met OFX, I have 20 OFX pre-met, you will see that in the name. So now I can start controlling this OFX. And for each OFX, of course, you have your unique HUD. It tells you what is there. And sometimes you have some buttons, like a color picker, or you have a color swatch you can operate. If you have an OFX that is not pre-mapped, like for example mosaic blur, and you press the detect, it will give you a general mapping. Basically what it'll do, it'll go through the OFX, scan for horizontal sliders, these things here, and we'll map them to buttons and knobs in case in this case these three here. Yeah? Up until a maximum of 16, of course, you don't have more knobs. All these things like menus and stuff you cannot map, like I did in the custom mapping where you do have it. For example, if I go to the world famous lens flare, yeah. Of course now everything is closed and tight, and this is not the way to control an OFX, but don't cry, don't despair. You press it and it will reset everything for you in the right position, open up your screen, ready for you. Now the pop-up will basically tell you you're ready to go. And then everything is mapped, and in the HUD you see that now everything is fully mapped. And also I have extra buttons like selecting outputs, light source masking here, yeah. I can go through menus, which you, and you can of course change the position of your flare and of the components, all very nice to play with. Yeah, if you want to go out, full, and bam, you're out. So full control of all pre-mapped OFX and all non-pre-mapped OFX. It also works for third-party OFX. Plug in anything that has horizontal sliders or controls that can be operated using the mid mouse button. So if you go with your mid mouse over something like this, you click, then you can sort of check if it's working. Yeah, now you see it's moving. So then you know it's suitable for being auto-mapped. Or you just press the map button and you'll see what's available for you. Also, if you don't like the way I auto-mapped it, you can take any control and you press and hold the OFX detect button, and you can go and map it yourself. So let's say I go to this and I want to map it on this knob here. Now, and I go this one, and my mouse is a bit wiggly, sorry. And I do it like here, and I go here, and I do it like here. So now I have here 3 controls I've mapped. So you hold and you touch, you hold and you touch, and then it just maps. That's it, very easy. 5 banks. This is bank 1, flashing, that means there's something in there. You see here 5 banks that are not there. And you can select a new bank and program something else in that bank. So you have 5 banks of 16. You can erase banks, you can clean them. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of stuff there. Initially this custom was set up for when I didn't have all these pre-mapped and auto-mapped stuff. But you can still use it for other stuff. Let's say you want to use it to map the spatial threshold under this, say this knob here. Now you have spatial threshold here. Yeah, it's not linked in any way to only OFX. You can use it for any of the GUI elements. You can use the scroll stuff. You have it also available in Edit and the Fairlight page. So there it's useful for all kinds of screen elements, and just play with it and come up with some funny ideas. Talking about Fairlight Edit, so let's move to the Edit page. There's a lot of stuff available there. Of course, as these labels on top mean nothing anymore, now you have to coordinate yourself on the control a different way, and the lights are giving you an idea of what's going on. So in this case, you see, for example, there are 3 red ones here. They coincide with 3 mutes on your screen. So if you click on the screen, for example, you take off a mute, also on the controller, this mute goes on and off. Yeah, so it's completely bidirectional. And you can press multiple things at the same time. It's very different than from the color page operations. Mutes, I have here solos and solo alert indicator. And if you press that, it'll take away all your solos. And on top you have your record enable, but you have to have your track set to enable, otherwise you won't see it, so it won't show up red here. And here now I have full fader control and pan control of the 8 tracks. And again, also that's bidirectional, so if I touch the fader, you see, they also move on the controller. So you really see where you are. 0 is 0, top is top. Very handy stuff. And now you're in audio mixing mode. You have 3 modes. That's new also for the users of the MK1. Top one is the mixing mode. Second is the inspector mode. You will see what happens, automatically opens the inspector. And the last one is the custom mode. So if you move to inspector mode, we can manually open and close the inspector for the current clip we are on. Of course, we can go to a clip, and it will automatically update the inspector for it. And you don't have to do anything else. Basically, it will my code will scan what's in the inspector and will map it for you. So I can start, controlling the zoom. I can control the position. I can control the rotation here. There's a very slight delay when you start touching the knob. That's unavoidable because it has to detect in real time every time you touch something. But still, it's very useful for not touching the mouse and making some quick adjustments. If I switch it over to audio, you don't have to change anything. It will automatically detect and start mapping the audio for you. So you can start changing the audio volume here. You have an extra flashing button here. It means you can press and hold and do if individual value reset. So now I can reset the value to 0 of volume. Yeah. So that's for the inspector mode. Again, you can also put an OFX in there. It works similarly. You switch on the OFX and it will control the OFX for you. Anything that's in the inspector, it will control. If I go to custom mode, it's similar to the one which was in color. So you can map manually what's in the inspector. Same if I go to Fairlight and I'm in the inspector mode, everything you see on the right side is automatically mapped. And if you get completely lost, there's a very different HUD mode now where basically it explains in detail what is possible, which functions are where, etc. etc. So you always have a helping hand nearby if you get lost. Jog also operates, of course, in Fairlight mode. Everything is consistent between Fairlight and Edit. If you are in the inspector mode, you still have control over your mutes. They still work. That's not affected. So these mode selection buttons only work for the knobs. Besides that, you have some standard navigational stuff in the edit page. If you can maneuver between clips. If you are in the Fairlight mode and you maneuver, if you hold the shift key, you can maneuver. If you switch off the HUD and you hold the shift key, then you can maneuver between tracks. You can see it happening on the lights as well. They update in real time. So I move one track to the right and move one track to the left. Or I can move a whole bank to the right. So now I have the next 8. If I switch into UE mode, I have the next 8 controls. And if I go back, I have the previous 8 controls. Same for the pan, of course. So very handy if you have a lot of tracks. If you have 5,000 tracks, you can maneuver through them 8 by 8. There's some handy reset functions. For example, I now can reset these 8 tracks. If I go back to the first set, I can reset the whole first bank. So you see again, also the reset function works on a bank by bank base. Same for reset of the pans. In the color page we have another few things I didn't mention probably. We have a button here to enable and disable the caching. You have some super handy feature for wipes. So let's say I'm in this clip and I want to activate a wipe. You go activate wipe. And now you have 3 modifier keys that operate on the center knob. So if I press this one, it's for wipe, and I can go and directly control the wipe. I can swap it here. I can change the wipe type to a vertical wipe, from horizontal, all the different types. The black background is not maybe the easiest way to see it, but here you go. So you have this type, and here you have this type. And the knob automatically adjusts to the specific wipe function. Next to it you have split functions. So if I have a bunch of clips selected and I go in split mode, I can go cycle the different split types. For example, this one or this one. Where you see all the collected clips, all your versions, all your LUTs, all your stills, etc. So very handy there. You have a loop button. Here I think I already told you for viewer manipulation, for full screen and that kind of things. And here you bypass the whole grade and only a single note, and the mute button. So I think I've probably covered everything. If I haven't, I apologize. There's so much to cover on this controller. Again, if you get lost, everything is under the HUD. So you'll be able to figure out where you are and what is the status. Of course, you also have the manual with 50,000 pages. Just kidding. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next video.